Good morning. I'm Donna Hamilton with Channel 8 News. Today is May 9th, 1998. We begin this morning with a tragic mystery currently unfolding in Riverdale. 29-year-old Harmony Ashcroft was found dead at 9:30 last night behind Tully's restaurant. Her cause of death is believed to be blunt force trauma to the head. Miss Ashcroft was at the restaurant attending the rehearsal dinner for her own wedding, which was scheduled for today. According to witnesses, she left the restaurant after an argument with her fiancé, Christian Peterson. Her body was discovered by a restaurant employee several minutes later in the back alley. Witnesses tried to resuscitate Miss Ashcroft, but she was pronounced dead at the scene.
Oh. Finally done with your nap. Detective Greg Gorgerson from Riverdale, Illinois. So you're probably wondering what you're doing here. Well, I sort of needed a fresh take. A gumshoe. Like you. And with your help, today we are going to solve a case that has been 20 years in the making. See, over the last few decades, I've scoured newspaper clippings, articles, testimonies, trying to set things right. See, there's a man currently behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. However, the state thinks otherwise. Now, you need to understand that we gotta keep this between us. I'm not supposed to be here, and neither are you. So we're going to try and make the best of the situation that we have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the evidence. I'm going to show you everything that I've gathered over the last 20 years. And together, we're going to solve this case once and for all. Sorry. Where are my manners? Please, take a seat. Now, before we begin, there are a few things I need to go over with you first. So this file in front of us currently is the file of Harmony Ashcroft. Harmony was murdered. We don't know why, we don't know how, and we don't know by who. Like I said before, there is currently a man spending time in prison for the past 20 years. But the thing is, I believe that he was wrongfully incarcerated. You see, Harmony was celebrating her pre-dinner for her wedding for the next day. Her husband was there, and they got into an altercation. Harmony then ran out of the restaurant and was found in the parking lot, dead, 8 minutes later. So you see the predicament that I'm kind of in, and why I want to make this case right. The next day, the news reported from Riverdale that she was murdered. So what I have for us today is the Unsolved Case File. And I'm going to be sharing it with you, and we will solve it together. What made you interested in this case? You see, it's very important if you have any significant connection. And if so, I can no longer have you here. And I'm sure you are a very good gumshoe, and you will become a great detective yet. But if you have any connections to this case, you need to tell me. And you need to tell me now. Because today, I will find out who killed Harmony Ashcroft. Well, I'm going to go ahead and move some files out of the way and go ahead and open up the case file. So first things first, what we have is our evidence envelope. Inside is everything that we need to know about the situation and how it happened. Next, I would like to show you the photo of Harmony. And everything inside here are suspects and testimony files from those suspects. We have 4 different suspects, and we are going to cross-analyze and make sure that we have everything correct. And again, I cannot stress this enough. Nobody can know that we are here. If they find out, there will be a lot of problems. Good. So first things first, we're going to open up the evidence. Take a look at this. And so inside of this file are photographs. Now please note that some of these might wane expectations. But in this line of work, we have no choice. As you can see, we got quite a bit of photographs, and yeah, that's Harmony. See, people thought I was crazy to think that the man who we sent to prison was the right one. But how I see these, I just don't understand. Things were overlooked. Things weren't checked. That's Harmony Ashcroft, the day she died. May 8th, 1998. At approximately 9:48 p.m. is when the picture was taken. Next, we have the surrounding alleyway and a few vehicles. Next, we have Jenny Rogers, Officer Kent Grayson, Wally Big Dog Bryson, Cheryl Pratt, Miss McCoy, Chad Highsmith, Jason Griggs, Chris Adams, Admiral Joseph Arthurson. And at the crime scene, this was the wedding ring. And currently, the man we have incarcerated is this man here, Mr. McBride. So our first job on the to-do list is to prove that Bones cannot be the killer. That's step 1. Let's begin. Here is the evidence and property custody document for William Bones McBride, our man who is wrongfully incarcerated. So first and foremost, on his person, oddly enough, was the wedding ring. The man who seized the evidence was none other than Officer Kent Grayson, and whenever they caught Mr. McBride, they found him clutching the ring whenever they found him inside of Grant Park. So they ruled this as a homicide. Here we have the coroner's death certificate for Harmony. She was only 28 years old, very short, at 5'4". On the outside, she had blunt force trauma to the right eye and exterior scalp. She had extensive skull fracture and severe hemorrhaging over the right eye socket, and the cause of death was blunt force trauma of the head. The victim died within moments of the strike. The victim was killed by a single strike to the head inflicted by a hand or a blunt object. The force and angle of impact indicated the murderer would need to be a left-handed or ambidextrous man or woman of considerable strength and height. So what that's telling me is that what we first need to do is figure out if our man here is right-handed. Now we're going to get into some testimonies, and what I'd first like to do is look at Mr. Bones' file here. and see if we can pick anything apart. So Mr. William Bones McBride is 6'2", weighs 170 pounds, and is indeed left-handed. And why I kept this photo out here was because it was photos taken of vehicles, and I thought I would come into play later, and it comes into play now. He states that he does not own a car. I was at Rambo's bar until right after 9 p.m. From there I went to Grant Park to get some rest and fell asleep. The next thing I remember is being surrounded by 20 officers shining lights in my eyes, somebody putting a ring in my hand while I was sleeping, or one of the officers put it on me. So it was right after 9 o'clock whenever Bones left the bar to go to the park. The murder occurred roughly around 9:30. And then by 10 o'clock, they were waking him up at the park with the ring in his hand. All the evidence is matching up to go against him at the moment. So basically, what on this piece of paper, it is the conversation between the local detective and Mr. McBride, and pretty much they are trying to offer him a plea deal for taking involuntary manslaughter for a shorter time in prison. However, Mr. McBride is keeping to his story. He got drunk, he got kicked out of the bar, and he wandered to the park and passed out. So this next form was from the bouncer at the bar. He does confirm that he was removed from the bar at 9 p.m., and he said that there was an altercation between him and the bartender, which there was, about money and being able to pay for more beer. And then Mr. McBride here said that he would get money, like he usually would. He would go outside and panhandle for beer money, but this time he didn't. He walked off, which is true. He walked to the park, and he was never seen again. So things are not looking good for Mr. Bones here. So I was reading the newspaper article, and there's a lot of information on this side, and the people she knew, people who loved her, how the employees at the restaurant tried to give her CPR. Her fiance, Mr. Christian Peterson here, was taken into custody. What I found curious on the back, this murder happened on a Friday, and underneath this tiny flap here, some of this is cut off, and it says that there would be a road closure on Friday from 8:45 p.m. to 9:45 p.m. And so what I'm wondering, if there was a detour there would have to be taken. So next I think we're going to look at the fiance here. Well, this is quite curious now, isn't it? Her own fiance is left-handed as well, and he actually weighs 10 pounds more than our convicted felon here. And he states that Harmony and Mr. Peterson went into the parking lot to go to their car as he had forgotten presents at their home. So he left Harmony there as he rushed off. Seems a bit suspicious, don't you think? That he magically disappears minutes from whenever she was found dead in the parking lot. Jenny Rogers, who is a friend of his, wrote down a confirmation of his whereabouts, and then we also have her statement here as well. So what Jenny is saying on her statement here is that she believes Christian murdered her friend, because what she is explaining in her statement is that Christian and Harmony were in an argument about the presents, and so they are arguing with inside the restaurant and then take the argument outside. Then they pass the time inside, tell a few jokes to lighten the mood, and then moments later a busboy comes inside and says that Harmony has been hurt and she has been laying dead outside for mere moments. So what Jenny is saying is that she believes that Christian is indeed the murderer here. Next we have the paperwork on Christian's recollection of that night to the local detective here in Riverdale. So according to Mr. Christian Peterson, he claims there are two others that might be the culprits. One being Mr. Derek Sivers, who had issues with Harmony because she was the one who took her son away from him after he was being abusive due to his mental illness. And then there was also Rex Ratliff, a man who was stalking her for quite some time. So Christian believes that these two might be the culprit, so we're going to move on to their files and see what we can find. So we're going to move on to Rex Ratliff, him being the stalker in this situation. So Mr. Ratliff's house is right down the street from the Tully's restaurant. He is also left-handed. He also lives right down the street from Harmony and Christian as well. And he claims that he was home the entire time. He got home from work from around 9 p.m. and stayed at his apartment all night. His landlord, Mrs. Mccoy, confirms this. So this witness statement is from Cheryl Pratt. She is a co-worker of Harmony at the clinic that she works at. Harmony is a child psychologist, and Cheryl Pratt here is the receptionist for the company. Mr. Ratliff here would call multiple times every day asking to see Harmony, wanting to see Harmony, and only Harmony, even though that she was a child psychologist and could not help him. Miss Cheryl here would advise that he see a different psychologist, and he would become irate. Whenever he would arrive at Harmony's workplace, he would seem out of touch with reality, creepy, and more on the predatory side. So as it seems, he did have some sort of wanting for Harmony's attention. And in her testimony, at the very bottom, she does indeed state that at the time of the murder, his car was seen driving past Tully's restaurant, which is seen in the photo, and him screaming outside of his window. Next, we're going to move on to his interview with the detective of Riverdale. He states that he doesn't know who Harmony is. He doesn't know the clinic that she works at. However, the detective here has all of his call history, claiming that he would call 3 times a day, and then the day before Harmony's murder, he called 10 times. The detective was playing bad cop, finally got Mr. Ratliff here to speak up. He says that the reason he is having issues and wanted to see Harmony was because he saw her inside of a brochure, and he wanted the voices to stop inside of his head. These voices specifically were his mother's, as his mother was killed on the same day 20 years prior, and it was due to his father hitting her in the head once with a baseball bat. So the way Harmony was killed matches the way his mother was killed 20 years prior. Next, we're going to go on to the witness statement of Mrs. Mccoy, who is Mr. Ratliff's landlady, who he is hoping claims that he was at home all night. However, she is elderly and she may not remember. So his landlady is the one who provided him with the pamphlet for Harmony's workplace and how he became obsessed with Harmony, as he already had this mental issue before receiving the pamphlet and having this sort of stalker sort of situation. Now, on the night of the murder, Mrs. Mccoy states that he returned home before 9 p.m. and that he was still in his apartment past 10 p.m. and his car did not leave that night. So he was indeed home the entire time. And then what we have here is our final document on the stalker man, Mr. Ratliff, and this is his call history, making many, many different calls to Harmony. Some of these calls lasting seconds, some of these calls lasting minutes. None of them were answered. Next, we're going to go on to Mr. Derek Sivers, who is the man who has somewhat of a grudge against Harmony for taking his son away from him due to his mental illness. Mr. Derek Sivers here, and he states, "I was boating with Admiral Joseph Arthurson from around 8:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. We were together on the Ainsley River all night. We saw and heard a lot of first responder activity near Tully's around 9:30 p.m., but we were unaware of what happened there later." And this was indeed confirmed by Admiral J. Arthurson. We have a few witness statements, one from Mr. Arthurson. So in this statement from Mr. Chris Adams, he is simply a passerby who has seen Mr. Derek Sivers going in and out of the clinic that Harmony works at on the 8th, the day of the murder. he states that Mr. Derrick's stated, "You have no right to keep me from my son. You will pay for this, young lady." And he was in a very irate, angry sort of mood on the 8th, the day of the murder. So in this conversation with the detective, Mr. Derrick here suffers from PTSD due to his time in the Navy. He did confirm that he did have an altercation with Harmony, and that he is trying to keep his temper under a sort of a longer fuse rather than a short one. However, here is whenever they are playing bad cop yet again, trying to get information from Mr. Derrick Sivers here, and he states that he was out on the boat with another Navy friend, who is indeed the Admiral Joseph Arthurson. However, the detective is also from the military and knows about a somewhat sort of a code where brothers will lie for brothers to the death sort of thing. So we are going to move on to the witness statement of Mr. Arthurson on the night and to see if they were indeed on a boat that night. Mr. Arthurson here has confirmed that they were indeed at the same time on the same river on the same boat. So it seems like Mr. Sivers here is indeed trying to turn around. However, 2 days before the murder, the family court document here that states the custody agreement removing custody from him of his son. And Harmony is one of the people who testified against him and saying that he is unfit to parent the son. And we have our final suspect here, Andy Allen. I have not seen his name or any information about him yet, so we shall see where this goes with him. Mr. Allen here. Let's see what kind of car he drives. A gray Hyundai Sonata. Oh, and would you look at there? At the crime scene, a gray Hyundai Sonata. And the license plate is 644435. 644435. That is the vehicle right there. So it looks like our Andy Allen was indeed at Tully's that night. Simply 8 minutes after the murder occurred. Let's see, and he is right-handed. Okay. Nice little curveball we have going here. So in his statement here, he says that he was at home fixing the brakes on his car all evening and went to bed at around 11 p.m. and at 2 a.m. he got a phone call from a close friend saying that Harmony has been murdered and that his neighbor Jason can vouch for him simply being at home all day, and Jason has indeed confirmed his whereabouts. However, this is his car. The license plate is the same. That is the same car. This is going to be a very interesting file. No wonder he was last, huh? So in this statement from Chad Highsmith is a friend of Andy Allen, and Andy Allen here is actually a very close friend, childhood friend with Harmony. Now, Mr. Andy Allen here has very strong feelings for Harmony and was distraught whenever Harmony and Christian became engaged. Andy stated that he wanted to go to the party, but he couldn't due to his car maintenance going to take him all night because he's not very good. From this statement from Chad, he was told that Andy got a phone call from Harmony's mother at 2 a.m. However, that contradicts his car being here a few minutes past the murder. So Andy was jealous, and also Chad here believes that Christian was indeed abusive to Harmony in some form or fashion. So in Andy's statement here, talking with the detective, he claims that he was indeed in love with Harmony. He wanted to be at the party but couldn't go. Unfortunately, this photo here that was taken contradicts this. He says that his brakes didn't work and it wasn't safe to drive. However, his car is clearly there. So Mr. Andy here is indeed lying about something. However, we have Jason's statement, his neighbor, who he borrowed a wrench from to fix his car, and Jason is the man who is trying to keep him out of hot water, it seems. And unfortunately, Mr. Jason indeed gave us the evidence we needed to prove that Mr. Bones here is not the correct suspect, as what Jason states here on this yellow slip of paper is that he did indeed go to his neighbor for a wrench to fix his brakes. However, it was at 10 p.m., and he says that he was sweaty and out of breath. Very interesting that Mr. Andy here would state that he was home all day. However, his car is clearly seen at the scene of the crime, at Tully's restaurant, at 9:38 p.m., whenever Mr. Andy here, the jealous best friend ever since they were 6 years old, he was in love with her. He went and did go over to his neighbor's house for a wrench. He was out of breath, sweaty, and it was 10 p.m. 30 minutes after the murder happened. So I think that would be more than enough evidence to see that it was not indeed Mr. McBride who was the murderer. However, I do have to say that it's not concrete. There could be underlying things that I've missed in the photos, but we have taken a look at all 5 suspects. We've taken a look at all photos, and now we are just trying our best to solve the first objective, making sure that our man, Bones McBride, is indeed not guilty. So the newspaper article says that the Dale Bridge will be closed at 8:45 and not open till 9:45. However, in the map that the police say that Mr. McBride went, it shows that he would have gone from Rambo's bar across the bridge to Tully's, then to the park. However, that would be impossible since the bridge was closed and the next closest bridge was at least a mile away, and it would be way past the park. So that's how we prove that he couldn't have gone to Tully's, because it was across the river. He couldn't have got there because the bridge was closed. So we proved he's innocent. So next what we have to do is open our first envelope. So inside we have another clipping of a newspaper. We'll read that in a moment. And we have our objective 2. We have to crack the false alibi. One of the 5 suspects in the case lied about his alibi. Your job is to find the proof. I know which one that is. That's Andy. He stated that he didn't go to Tully's, however he was there. So we already know this one. Let's read the newspaper article. Mr. McBride cleared of all charges in the 1998 Riverdale murder, and the case has been reopened. So next is to convict Mr. Andy Allen of his false alibi. So I did indeed just confirm what I was thinking. Mr. Andy Allen here, his alibi doesn't add up, as his car is seen outside front of Tully's at 9:38 p.m., and his driver's license is on his person of interest sheet, and he claims that he was never there because of car problems. So, our next step is to open the next special envelope. Inside we have some sort of pink slip. We have our next objective, and we have another photo of them saying Riverdale Red Sox T-Ball League Champs 1976. One of the suspects lied about something that seriously implicates him in the murder. My job is to find it. This is the moment where we find out who actually murdered Harmony Ashcroft. This is a letter from Deborah Ashcroft, Harmony's mother. Oh, it's a letter to me. So in Deborah Ashcroft's letter to me, she claims that she believes that Andy would never kill her, and that after the murder, since it's been 20 years, he has become distraught and can't handle it. And this photograph here is of Andy with Harmony in 1976, whenever they were kids. It says that one of the suspects lied about something that seriously implicates him in the murder. My job is to find it, and I think I know what it is. So I'm looking at the person of interest report of Mr. Andy, and I'm starting to think, I think he was trying to frame Christian for the murder by, in the coroner report, how we've been looking for a left-handed person this entire time. However, Allen is the only right-handed suspect. So I think he was trying to throw us off the trail by being only right-handed but killing Harmony on the left side. And to keep backing this up, there are multiple pictures of Harmony with Allen playing baseball. So I think he killed her with a baseball bat. So I'm thinking he's lying about being right-handed, because in the photo, he has his glove on his left hand. I think that proved it. I think he lied about being right-handed. I think Andy is the killer. And I think we just proved it. So now that we've proven that Andy is indeed a liar, a cheater, a creep, we finally get to open our last envelope. It now says, solved. Congratulations, detective. A voluntary statement. I'm not sure where that came from. I've never been violent in my entire life. Harmony went down instantly, and I immediately got down to try to help her. She didn't have a pulse, and it was clear from the lifeless eyes on her badly crushed skull that she was dead. As I stood above her in absolute shock, I noticed the engagement ring on her hand and thought about how Christian caused all this. In the heat of the moment, I decided to take his engagement ring, thinking that he didn't deserve it, and seeing it on her hand ever again. I hurried back in my car, but was too rattled to drive away right away. About 10 minutes after the police arrived, I realized I'd better get out of there, and drove home, taking the bridge near Riverdale Marina. About halfway home, I realized I had to get rid of the engagement ring, so I stopped at Grand Park, where I saw Mr. McBride sleeping, and I put it in his hand. I didn't know Mr. McBride, and didn't intend to frame him for murder. I just thought in a few days he might try to pawn the ring and it'd get back to the police and send him on a wild goose chase looking for the wrong killer. I realized I didn't have an alibi as soon as I got home, so I went to my neighbor's house and pretended like I had been fixing the brakes on my car all evening and I had fixed them earlier that evening before leaving for the party. I knew that police would be looking for a powerful left-handed person, and while filling out the person of interest form, I decided that I would pretend to be right-handed. I've been using my right hand since. I'm so sorry for what I've done to Harmony, Christian, their families, Mr. McBride, and everyone else who has been affected by my actions. I am actually relieved to finally admit to what I did, and I hope it helps some. I'm not sure if my nightmare is finally over, or just beginning. My name is Andy Allen, and I killed Harmony Ashcroft on May 8th, 1998. It was a crime of passion, and not premeditated. On the evening of May 8th, 1998, I drove to Tully's to attend Harmony and Christian Peterson's wedding rehearsal dinner. I intended to tell Harmony that I loved her, and that I did not think she should marry Christian. But when I arrived at the party, I didn't have the courage to go in. I didn't want to be around all those people celebrating the wedding, and decided to wait to talk to Harmony by her Land Rover in the back parking lot. At about 9:30 p.m., Christian and Harmony came out of the back door of Tully's together. They were arguing, and I hid behind another vehicle, since I wanted to talk to Harmony alone. Christian was really angry and screaming in Harmony's face. I was about to fight him when Christian got into the car and peeled out of the parking lot alone. I thought it was the perfect opportunity to tell Harmony how I felt, so I walked up to her and with every ounce of courage I could muster, I shared my true feelings. It took me a minute or two, but I told her I had fallen in love with her at 6 years old, playing t-ball together, and my feelings had only grown stronger through the years. I told her she could do so much better than Christian, and that if she only gave me a chance I could prove it. Harmony's reaction was not what I anticipated. All those times I ran through the scenario in my mind. She said something like, "Oh, Andy, you poor thing," and put her hand on my shoulder, but I took a step back. It was clear that her feelings for me were not the same as mine, and I was floored and embarrassed beyond belief. I had run through the scenario so many times in my mind, and that wasn't ever a response I was expecting. She kept coming toward me, offering me pity and concern for my feelings like I was one of her patients, and I just couldn't take it. I kept asking her to leave me alone, and she kept reaching out her hand, and I kept backing away. She kept moving towards me, and I was just so crushed and embarrassed and confused, and the rush of my feelings along with her pity caused me to snap. I just wanted her to give me some space and leave me alone, but I lost control, and I punched her in the face really hard with my left hand. So now we fortunately know who the real killer is, don't we? Andrew. You've been sitting here this entire time, thinking, oh, is he gonna solve something? Is he going to help me? Is he going to maybe overlook a detail? Andrew, you've been sitting here the entire time, wondering, as I go through all the evidence, as you watch me piddle at my papers. Andrew Allen, you killed Harmony Ashcroft. The case is solved. You're sitting there watching me look through all the evidence again. You've been in jail for the past 3 years. And you think by just sitting there, things will change. Things will get better. You see, I don't know why you wanted me to come in today. I thought I would just humor you. Maybe help you cope. But I want you to look at me. Andrew, you killed an innocent woman. You took away a family member, a daughter, a wife, a future. Andrew, you caused this. And I know you're sitting there in silence, staring back at me with your glazed eyes, wondering how it came to this. Why I invited you here to begin with, why you wanted me to look over your case file yet again, after I've already solved it years ago. Why we are sitting in the same room together, and I act as if you're my colleague, and act as if you're my colleague, a gumshoe. I wanted to help you. And I sense remorse. I do. But I believe you're where you belong.
In a shocking turn of events today, 48-year-old Riverdale man Andy Allen has confessed to a murder that happened over 2 decades ago. According to authorities, Mr. Allen confessed to murdering Harmony Ashcroft in the parking lot behind Tully's restaurant in Riverdale on May 8, 1998. The murder happened on the night before Miss Ashcroft was to be married and drew national media attention at the time. Allen's confession comes just days after the surprising release of another man, William McBride, who had been wrongfully convicted of the same crime. According to his confession, Allen approached the victim in the parking lot to tell her that he loved her, and after responding that she did not feel the same, he became enraged and struck her in the head, crushing her skull and killing her instantly. Allen admits to then stealing her engagement ring and leaving the scene of the crime. While driving home, he placed the ring in the hand of a homeless man sleeping in Grant Park. That man, William McBride, was found by police with the victim's ring and was convicted of murder. McBride spent over 20 years behind bars for a crime that he did not commit. Allen originally told police that he was at home on the night of the murder, but an independent investigation uncovered photographs showing a vehicle with his license plate at the crime scene. Allen also lied to police about being right-handed because investigators were looking for a left-handed killer. An independent investigator also uncovered evidence revealing that Mr. Allen had lied to police and had been left-handed his entire life. He switched to writing with his right hand while under investigation for the murder and has continued living as a right-hander for over 2 decades. When detectives approached Allen about the inconsistencies in his alibi earlier today, he apparently broke down and confessed. I will have more on this story later in the broadcast.